So I got the Capricorn phase now. This is just a kind of serious measurement how old we are, what we're doing. The Saturn factors come in. It's not all bad, but it's not as frivolous. It's a little more mature than when I was younger. Okay, here's February 17th. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, your chart's still going to be your chart that you're working with. So this is from Pakistan, from Lahore, and you have Sun at 28 degrees of Aquarius. So at 2, the progressed Sun would have gone into Pisces. And from 2 up to 32, there's Aquarius trying to be Pisces, trying to understand Pisces, trying to have the sense of adventure and searching. Not Aquarius knows everything, but there's a searching element during this Pisces phase. Then from 32 on, it goes into Aries, and there's I'm doing this, get out, I'm doing this. It's an impulsive, assertive, active age from 32 to 62. Then from 62 it comes into Taurus age, so getting the rewards or wanting to have the beauty, or like whether it's vanity or money or whatever, the values start to come out to be really important, like to that Aquarian. So it's like a process within yourself. You're still the sign you are, but your concern goes in these directions. And as it concerns it, it becomes stable or not stable and affects the way you approach your life. And it certainly affects the transits. But until you got the transits anchored, if you study this first, you're never going to get stability out of the transits. You got to see what the transits are doing and measuring them and watch them and know that solidly. So that's in place. You know that's real. Then you begin to see, oh, this shift is going on inside of that. Then you can begin to see it, to understand it. I just put Pope Francis's chart here because I wanted a Southern Hemisphere example, but still, same thing. He's the December Gemini, born in just near the longest day, 25 degrees of Gemini. And at 5 degrees, in his 5th day, went into Cancer. So he's very homey, traditional from 5 to 35. Then it went into Leo from 35 up to 65. And then it's in Virgo. And it's climbing, it's ascending in positions from below the horizon to above. So you could begin to, but it still follows the same days. It's not the signs are shifted. It means the rulerships get affected. It's going from Gemini into Cancer into Leo into Virgo. It's not going from Sag into Capricorn into Aquarius into Pisces. It's going the other. He's a very independent person in his own way. He brings brought a lot of changes to the Vatican. I think he once was supposed to go somewhere. When he first took it office, he was supposed to go take the Pope Mobile and drive home, and he took the public transit. So he just had his own independent ways. Anyways, then we have Donald Trump's Gemini, 22 degrees Gemini. At 8, it would have gone into Cancer. From 8 to 38, it would have been in Cancer. He was very involved with his family business until he took it all over, took all the money from everybody and set up his empire, building homes and hotels. Then it went into Leo. And went into Leo at 37, 38, and would be there till 38 till he got to 68. So it's just ascendance right there too. But his progressed Sun just went over this Leo ascendant into the Virgo as he got elected. The transits were lousy, but his progressed Sun was right there. Right, we're going to come back to some of these things. When we get to the case studies, we're going to look at this more clearly. But before we can do the case studies, we have to learn see the depth and become open and tuned in to see the levels that these things work at. Okay, we looked at Carl Jung's already and Sigmund Freud's. Sigmund Freud's a Taurus, 16 degrees. So at 14, his progressed Sun went into Gemini, and from 14 to 44. He developed the Freudian slip, the throw out words, develop your psychology in his 8th house. He's going through that and how to and thinking through where traumas and how sexuality caused different things. But I think the Freudian slip of say words, write down a whole bunch of words, and then suddenly some word comes out of context, and that's the word that slipped out, that's representing your repressed energy. So I thought that's very picturesque there. But then so we got 14, 44, and then it was 74 where it would go into Leo. So 56, Yeah, he lived higher up into this. He didn't quite, I don't think he quite made it up to his mid. It was in Leo at the end, but you can see these stages, and when you know the person's life and you have a history written out, like right now, by going through your studies and then transits, we started making this spreadsheet a month for each year and writing down this month, this happened to me, this is where I live, these things happen. And you start to see how, as you got your transits and you remember, hopefully you've built up a very good history on a spreadsheet dated chronologically. Because then now you can go back and see what was happening then. You can begin to tune in and see what was going on at those times when you're just trying to imagine it blank. So really, between the transits and progressions, I've reconstructed my history pretty well, where there's only a few periods where there's 3 or 4 months and a couple of places where I don't have a clear memory of what was going on. Okay, so this is our basic, try to think, how are we doing for time? Okay, we're right on time. So now, one of the things we have to do, so this is basically the theory. This is the stuff we want to get to. These are the things we're going to see around the progressions. And they'll unfold, and everybody has their own special story, their own special way of working it. I really just ran through the surface just quickly to give a sense of what we're going in to measure. Now, so for example, mine's at 23, my son's at 23 degrees. Really, it's 23 degrees, 18 minutes. And then it's a certain time. There's actually a date. You can calculate when it's going to, the date, so many days at a certain time. Well, you look in your phone, you see when the sun was into Scorpio, and you know on the day that happens. But the difference between the day I was born and the date and time I was born, date and time that the sun went into Scorpio, those are, we have so many days, so many hours, so many minutes in that time period. But in the regular time, but we have to convert it to progress time. So we have to convert each day to a year, each 2 hours to a month, each 4 minutes to a day. And this 4 minutes for a day, it's like if you don't have an exact time, if you haven't got your times more or less accurate and figured out by transits of Saturn and things like that, if you're out a degree in your ascendant, a degree can mean you're out a year in your progressive aspects, or sometimes it could throw you out 10, 15 years from an outer planet aspect. So huge phenomenon. This is why there's such, like up till now, being within a degree or so is close enough to work with the transits and everything, but really you're trying to tighten it up to get to know exactly, because we're dealing with really exact time measurements. The whole thing is somewhat hypothetical about this theory, but really when you start watching it, it's quite incredible how you can see it, how you can observe it, and you can watch these things happening. It's always teaching you. So we're going to have to learn how to calculate these days and convert the days or degrees and days into years and months and dates to get the times that these things will happen at. And to start this with, we have the moment we're born. The easiest way to do this, like you can calculate a chart for like every year. If you're doing your progressions for 1 year, you just take your chart that you're born at. You keep the same time, and you just change the day. So I would take October 17th. I'd go to October 18th at 2 a.m. same place, and run a chart for it. That's my progressions for my first birthday. On the 19th, it would be and that would be where the chart would be, at that time, that would be my progress chart for that year. So you can do a chart for each year of your life. It's worth doing, just to be able to look at it. But that's not how we're going to be watching the phases rather than just the charts. But as an exercise, you might want to get on the computer and run off a chart and just have a printout, a binder, where you have a chart for each year, and then you can put other pages inside of it for notes and things that happened that year. I used to do that. I haven't used that as much as I used the spreadsheet with my history and the graphs and the things coming up. So we're going to organize this so we can find it. There's going to be a lot of things that happen because the sun goes along, gets into Scorpio. When it gets into Scorpio, boy, it's going to conjunct Jupiter, it's going to square Saturn, it's going to square Pluto, it's going to conjunct Mercury, it's going to conjunct Pluto, it's going to hit the ice, it's going to hit a whole bunch of aspects. I got a whole lot of things happening during that time, and there'll be a lot of dates to figure out. Okay, so when we calculate a chart, I'm talking from another century now. This seems like old people gobbledygook talking about calculating a chart. But when you hand calculate a chart, you have to take the time you're born at. Like you're in Eastern time. If you're flying to Toronto, for example, Eastern Daylight Time now. Well, it's an hour fast. So to find out what the main time is would be 1 hour earlier. So you got standard time. But then standard time is everything within 15 degrees or around 15 degrees is going to be kept the same clock, the same time on the clock, so that all Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal will all have the same time on the clocks. That's standard time. But really, there's something called local mean time. It's mean because you have to calculate it, but local mean time, really, the sun rises the sun can be risen in Montreal, it's just rising in Ottawa, and it's still dark, it's still not risen in Toronto. So the actual horoscope and the actual local time is just slightly different by degrees. So that's the actual time. You have to calculate that to see the exact time, and then see what time it was. Get the time in England, Greenwich Mean Time, again, mean. But to see where the planets were, because the books to tables were made for the planets of Greenwich Mean Time, or the planets at noon or midnight Greenwich Mean Time, the planets are there. So we have to see what time it was in England when we were born, and then we have to see not just what the time and date we were born, we have to see if it was, we have to fix the local mean time adjustment to see what time it really was in Greenwich. So we have to do something similar. Instead of trying to just get our chart, we have to go from our chart and see so we're born at some time. It might be I'm 2 a.m. It would have been approximately 5 a.m., 5:06 or 5:54, 4:54 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So like the moment I was born is going to be between two of the listings in Greenwich Mean Time. I'm born 2 a.m. It would have been about 5 a.m. in England, in Greenwich, and so I'm between. The ephemeris would have a listing for noon and a listing noon on the 17th and noon on the 16th. I'm between the 16th and the 17th. Someone born at 2 p.m. would be between the 17th and the 18th. So when you're using progressions to work with trends, I'm doing this intentionally without the charts just now. I'm just trying to explain some of the knots we have to do. We have to find out what time it was in England at the time we were born and how many hours and minutes it was until the next noon or till the next midnight, depending which ephemeris you're using. And once you see how many hours to the next minute, we have to convert that to the number of days. And see what number of days a year, so we can see what day of the year it happened. What we can get an actual time, and an actual time in our life date from our progressed timing. So this time that we're born at and the date of the first noon ephemeris listing after we're born is called the progressed constant date. What date is this progressed constant date? When we have the progressed constant date for the first ephemeris listing after we're born in Greenwich, it's going to be that every listing after that, in the ephemeris you'll see March 21st, March 22nd, March 23rd, it goes on like this. But if your progressed constant date would be December 5th, it would be December, each one is going to be December 5th, but the year will change. In the ephemeris, the day is changing, but in the progressed chart, the year is changing. So you just make another ephemeris that you're using. And it's really useful to do this. But you still have to calculate what's called the progressed constant date. Now, I'm just gonna, where are we here?